sources for startup financing. Self-funding, which is basically you using your own money, your own savings, your own winnings, your own who knows where you got the money, but you're self-funding it. You're the one that's paying. FFF, friends, fools, family, that give you money because you can convince them, either because they're romantically attached to you, familiarly attached to you, or you can convince them not to take equity, not to give you a loan, but to give you some money to get started. Grants, public and private, this varies wildly from wherever you're situated, which country, and so on and so forth, even which state. Usually they come with a whole bunch of caveats and requirements, and who knows. Accelerators. With accelerators, I mean the real kind that gives you money in exchange for a small piece of your company, a small piece of equity. That is to say, a startup support program that will help you by giving you a bit of money and access to a alumni network of other founders, and of course a lot of information and knowledge gathered over the years of, for instance, who's a good investor, who's a bad investor, and can help you out with legal disputes and competition disputes and so on and so forth. Good example of this is Y Combinator, 500 Startups, and Techstart. Accelerators are usually defined by having a fixed time limit, which is to say an acceleration phase usually lasts 3 to 6 months, more regularly towards the 3 months end. Business angels, individual investors, individual with a high net worth that's also investing in startups. Family offices, which is basically individual money or family money under management. You'll find that some of these also invest in startups. Their terms, the different verticals they do invest in, the ticket sizes, the stages, that varies wildly. Most family offices are completely different from each other, so you need to do your research to figure out if they're for you. Venture capital, or VC, which is an institutional investor, basically investing other people's money as a profession. We also have the corporate variety of this, corporate investor or CVC, corporate venture capitalist, which is a professional who is investing a company's money. Strategic partners, which could be another company, another startup, or a corporate venture capitalist. Crowdfunding and crowd financing. Well, crowdfunding is when no equity changes hands, also known as pre-sales often. Well, it depends on the platform. You can keep all the money raised, depending on where you raised it, minus, of course, the rake that the platform takes, even if you don't reach your funding goal. Crowdfinancing, on the other hand, is equity through funding in a large pool of smaller checks from average people, which are basically unsophisticated startup investors, represented, hopefully, by a single point of contact and contract. And the terms also wildly vary, so be careful. Bootstrapping, my favorite. It's financing through revenue. That is to say, you're financing yourself the most hardcore, honest way there is by actually having a product or service or anything that the market finds valuable enough to give you money from, and you scale it from there. there are many sources of funding for startups. The Pitching Masterclass is primarily focused on venture capitalists and business angels as the source for your funding. Let's do a reality check. What's the difference between a venture capitalist, a VC, and a business angel? Well, the VC is a glorified fund manager that invests other people's money, and they get paid if you die or not. They're doing this as a profession. Now, they take their 2 and 20. They are representing a large pool of money, often also money from other funds, and they have an investment thesis, which is basically a fancy word for a structured bet, whereas 1 out of 10 of their investments needs to pay off handsomely for this numbers game, this thesis, this structured bet, to work out for them. And you're just a number in that game. Now, the VC can write much larger checks than angels, but they have to see at least a 50 to 100x return potential. They need to see the potential for a huge payoff. Also, most often they invest in later rounds because their investment theses require them to purchase a significant stake for it to work out, and that means that they're a little bit more risk averse. Also, VCs don't like to co-invest, but they don't want to admit it. But however, they usually do, or at least they have the capability to follow on. If they're willing, that's a different story. Business angels, on the other hand, are high-net individuals who are investing their own money. Often these are exited founders, and also because it hurts losing your own money, their bets must be spread into more baskets and into smaller checks than from a VC. Angels also need to be in very early rounds to get enough equity for their smaller checks. And also, a business angel may or may not need to see a return potential to the order of 50 to 100x. Of course, most of them are probably dreaming about it. Also, they may or may not co-invest, so look at their track record, who they invest with. Also, some of them might be part of syndicates, who knows? You have to do your research. Business angel may or may not have the ability, that is to say the wallet, to do follow-on. Very often, they do not follow on. Well, mostly, especially also if they're outside of the US. So what's an angel syndicate? An angel syndicate is a group of individual investors who are investing their own money, but they're pooled together in a single investment. They can write larger checks than individual angels. They invest in early rounds. Some of them also may co-invest with lead VC investors, and they may or may not do follow-on, so do your research. That's the difference between VCs and business angels. Everything else you read or hear is probably noise.